market has been in a surplus, and I think if you look at the price dynamics of platinum, you'd ask, why is the average price higher? And it's a combination of factors. I mean, most importantly, in the kind of short-term dynamics of this market is investment demand. It's the same feature of silver, gold. You've got a great deal of investor interest in this metal. People are willing to hoover up the surpluses. And the reason they're willing to hoover it up, though, is slightly different to the case of gold. There's a commonality in the sense of low interest rates. You've heard me say that a million times. That is important, people looking for yield and return. But there's another factor here, and that is the South African risk factor. You know, the market balances, the stock position of platinum is such that it's still an attractive proposition for investors.
With regards to the crisis in Japan, a lot of concern as to the dampening effect that it's had on platinum consumption from this big economy. Then again, we've got to rebuild Japan as well, so obviously a longer term picture. What kind of impact is it going to have on the supply-demand dynamics?
Well, I mean, Japan's not a huge consumer per se in terms of the number of cars the Japanese drive and the number of television sets they buy and so on and so forth. Japan is important in terms of the export side of things, and there's definitely been an effect there. You've seen a collapse in order production, the supply chain has been badly affected. I mean, one just has to accept the fact that this is an unfortunate and tragic reality of Japan at the moment, but that demand will be filled somewhere at some time in the future. So I think a bit like we saw in 2008, 2009 with the front running of purchases through the incentive schemes in Europe and Japan and the United States, where people were buying cars in advance of when they would normally have bought them because of the incentives. What we're finding now is people aren't buying cars because they're not there. You've had the production problem. It's postponing the issue of when people actually buy the cars. So I think this is just more of a timing issue rather than any fundamental shift in the supply-demand balances for platinum.
Quite fascinating to also look at the auto catalyst sector, because us as journalists, we go on air and we keep talking about platinum having that industrial use and of course that investment element as well. It seems that palladium has been a nice substitute for platinum, especially when it comes to the smaller vehicles. Tell us about the play between these two metals.
Well, I mean, technically they are substitutable. I mean, the platinum it has many preferable characteristics as a catalyzer, in the catalysis field. But if you actually look at the substitutability, it's technically possible. The price differential has been a huge incentive to move away from platinum into palladium. We saw this big technological shift in the move from platinum to palladium and diesel. But again, when you have a look at the palladium supply and demand balances, here's a market that's been in a fundamental deficit for, I guess here, I think it must be 14 of the last 15 years. The issue here is that it's not sustainable. The state of affairs in palladium is not sustainable. So the substitutability that we've seen can't continue, which is one of the reasons it depends on your time frame in all of these markets. You're looking at platinum, palladium. Sooner or later, something has to happen here to bring these markets into greater balance, because what's happening in palladium at the moment is not sustainable on a 10 or 15-year view. Given
the various scenarios that could be playing out this year, could we perhaps see platinum even heading towards its all-time high, which is north of $2,000 an ounce? Could that be a reality?
Look, it's an outside chance. I think you'd be silly to say no to that. I mean, given that we're expecting prices to touch, somewhere in the region of 1900, you've got to countenance the fact that it could go to 2200 at some juncture. And that really is a function of what you think is going to happen to the investment climate overall. And as you know, we're very bullish on gold. And I think if gold pushes above 1600, and say, for instance, gold starts to move to 1700, I think platinum will go with it. Not to the same extent, but there is still a strong investment case for all of these metals that will follow through until we see the interest rate cycle move. And under that scenario, sure, 2300 is a possibility. I don't think it's highly likely, but it's a possibility.